Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. I see that's quite a crowd, so thank you. So let's get started. Today, we're going to tell you a little story of how to build a personalization platform for 30 million users and not go bust in the process. But it's more than that, really. We will talk about how to approach building any formidable data-driven platform and how to conduct game-changing projects with limited resources. So I'm sure that it will be relevant to many of you. My name is Piotr Turek. This is Michał Żmuda. And we hope that what we are going to share today is not just a statistical fluke, but more of a result of our experience and some of the best practices and lessons learned that we applied to this project. And today, we represent DreamLab, which is the IT hub of Linear Access Springer, which itself is the biggest digital publisher in Central Eastern Europe. Our publishing platform, Ring Publishing, powers a multitude of leading media brands in 9 countries on 2 continents. Over 30 million users use our products every day. And as you can imagine, our challenge was to come up with a personalization platform for all of those brands, all of those people. So quite a challenge.
Take a look at our journey plan for today. And first, we are going to give you a couple of reasons to believe. We've built Personalization as a service, which is a platform, and the success of platform could be estimated by the scale it operates at, and ours is not too shabby. Just take a look at those numbers. The quality, on the other hand, could be estimated by the capabilities of the platform, and our platform has been built from the start to support a diverse portfolio of brands. And thanks to that, we are confident offering our services to new and new incoming external clients. And if someone wants to integrate with us, we are there to deliver. In just a week, we can start bringing in value to any new client. We are also ready for big deployments. We've went from initial evaluation to handling almost the whole homepage area of Onet in less than 2 weeks. And Onet is the biggest media site in Central Eastern Europe. Why Onet adapted us so quickly? First of all, we've made a real deal of money. Those gains translate directly into gains in revenues. And revenues are important, but we've also invested in partnership. We've helped our partner to undergo a transition from a business that is ad-centric to being an organization which is user engagement-oriented. Users become loyal with us. And with that partnership, we fostered adoption in other brands as well.
Right. So we've presented some results. They are pretty good. So now let's see how we actually got there. And first, let's take a look at some of the real-world challenges that we faced along the way. But first, let's take a step back and briefly discuss what's the most popular and the most widely studied and researched approach to personalization used today everywhere in the world, the one-to-one personalization. And to just sell you a simple intuition behind this approach, it's very simple. It's basically whenever we want to generate recommendations for users, think the yellow guy and the pink lady, we just find other users, which are the most similar to them. And really, it's as if the yellow guy and the pink lady approach their friends and ask them to recommend a few articles. It's really that. And even though this intuition is very simple, it is the fundamental building block behind many advanced approaches to personalization. However, we found out that this very popular approach faces many difficulties in the world of digital publishing. So first, the goal of a digital publisher is not just to give people content they might like. It's even more so to give them, to keep them informed about events around the world as they unfold, not hours later. So in our case, we have over 7,000 new articles published every day on our sites. And we have to deliver them to our users in a matter of minutes. And we found out that this classical approach to personalization struggles a lot with this kind of problem because it relies heavily on those users. When you want to recommend those new articles, it relies very heavily on other users already having had the opportunity to see those articles and to like them. And of course, since they are new, nobody has seen them before. So we need to work around this issue. And we can think about many workarounds. We can mix with content-based approaches. So instead of looking for similar users, we are looking for similar articles, and then infer who might like those articles based on those similar articles that we found. We can also mix with popularity-based approaches. But the point is that whatever we decide to do, we are adding complexity to our system. But there is more. You know what this is? The guy on the left is a cold user, and he's suffering from the cold start problem. And you may think that you know a lot about your users, and that may be true on aggregate. But I bet that you know much less about particular users than you think. And that's true even of subscription-based services like Netflix. In our case, it's over 25% of users who are considered cold. So we know very little about them. And we cannot just ignore them. And as you can imagine, this classical approach to personalization struggles again with cold users because it relies on finding users similar to you. And if we know nothing about you, then how are we supposed to find users similar to you, right? So again, we must look for workarounds, such as online model updates to learn the preferences of users more quickly. You can mix again with popularity-based approaches, but guess what? Complexity. Again, it's creeping into our system, but there is more. I bet that you've heard the term filter bubble. It's this very dangerous phenomenon that arises very often in today's internet. It's basically when you're trapped inside of a tiny little cozy bubble of information, only ever getting what the system is confident that you will like. And from the perspective of a digital publisher, which prides itself in pluralism, it is completely unacceptable to trap people in those bubbles. And have you ever wondered, why filter bubbles happen? One of the possible answers is that really the classical approach to personalization is prone by design to this problem, because all it does, it exploits what the system already knows about you, and it has no built-in exploration whatsoever. So again, we need to work around this issue. And what we can do, we can add random items for fairness. We can add proper exploration. We can try to build it in the system. But guess what? Complexity, again. And finally, to the biggest elephant in the room. What you can see here is a big, sparse matrix. It's big because we have millions of users and tens of thousands of articles. And it's sparse because each particular user interacts with just a tiny fraction of content. And I guess you can already intuitively feel that it may be very difficult to deliver in such a setting recommendations to users with very low latency, with very high throughput, and even more so if we want to do online updates, which we want to do because we want to learn the preferences of users quickly. So this ubiquitous complexity and dimensionality of the problem can easily lead your organization to the conclusion that the cost of personalization is simply too damn high. But is it really?
So you may already guess that we are clearly in need of something else. And in such scenarios, you often need to think about your assumptions and constraints and relieve them. In our case, it is forgetting about one-on-one approach, because your users, Bob and Sally, don't really care if their recommendations are unique. They only care if they are attractive to them. And instead of solving problem how to deliver one-on-one personalization that will work in that setting, you could decompose the problem into two, finding a way to segment users and finding algorithms that will work in that setting by design. And that's what engineers often do. They decompose problems, divide and conquer. So my colleague has highlighted a few reasons why personalization one-on-one approach isn't suitable alone. You need to integrate that with something else. And we probably should find something that is more simple, that is more fitting, that avoids complexity and works in real time by design and addresses our challenges by design. And there where bandit algorithms come in. They are simple agents who balance exploitation and exploration. This is their primary goal. And they are as simple. You can code the simplest bandit algorithm in less than 30 lines of code. The power of that approach comes not from the complexity, but from the effectiveness of data. If you get the right data to the right place at the right time, you have results. And if you apply your data correctly, you can harness trends, and you can counter filter bubble. And one other significant feature of bandit algorithms is that they are prone to optimization. Even simple A/B testing can boost your performance. And if you apply hyperparameter optimization, we are currently investigating that, you may boost your performance significantly. So I told you that bandit algorithms are effective when you get the right data to the right place at the right time. How to do so? Let us review our sample architecture. We start with feedback from browsers, from user browsers. We collect streams of events from that browsers. We join them to compute measures. But we don't stop at the measures alone, because businesses are constantly changing. Their KPIs are changing. So we've built ability to define the KPIs in real time, to change them to the business. And we've done so by using all AP cubes and microservice architecture. That allows us to deliver that KPIs with subsequent latency to drive our bandit recommenders to generate new recommendations that generate new feedback. And we've ended up with continuous improvement. And if you apply the correct technologies, it is really cost-effective and trend responsive. So we've got algorithms and we've got architecture, how to provide them with data. Let us see where do user segmentations fit that picture. As we've mentioned, Bob and Sally don't really care if the recommendations are unique. They care for attractiveness. And our results from the beginning of the presentation prove that this approach can be effective, that the recommendations are attractive. And if you apply segmentations correctly, they can help you reduce costs because they foster caching. They help you counter filter bubble, as the reasonably coarse segments introduce greater variety in recommendations. And they can help you with cold users, with cold start, because you know a little about particular cold users, but you know something about them as a whole, as a segment. They are a segment of users who visit nodes so often or who don't accept cookies. And you can optimize for that segment. This is something that one-on-one personalization didn't deliver. And if you want to optimize it even more, you can divide that segment into smaller ones by using geolocation on browser fingerprint. However, the single most important thing about segmentations is that they introduce the tunability of costs. With segments, as the number of segments grows, your costs also grow. And this might be effective for big clients who have enough data to support fine-grained segments. They could also accommodate probably one-on-one personalization if they weren't so time-sensitive. But for smaller clients, and you also want to sell to them, you need something that is affordable and still works. And you can achieve that with a smaller number of segments used. So we know that segments have benefits and it might be a way to go. How to build them? Let us review just on high level our sample architecture of building a general interest-based segmentation. We start with historical feedback with our events and article metadata that are stored on cold storage. We are doing really simple topic modeling on that, and we cluster our users around that. We are using simple approaches for that purpose. And that clusters of users are our segments, which we store in online view for our real-time recommenders to use in online traffic. This architecture is simple, and it is significant to us, not because of its simplicity, but also because it's unsupervised one. And it allows segments to appear spontaneously. And that helps us to harness trends even more because it helps bandits to optimize for temporary segments. Lately, we've observed a Game of Thrones segment that improved our performance, and we believe this is a way to go. So we've got algorithms. We have a way how to provide data for those algorithms. We've got segmentation, and we know how to build some simple segmentations. What we've ended up with? We've ended up with an army of multi-armed bandits that are contextualized with user segments. That army fights the fight of our client, for example, fight for user engagement. And for us, it brings sizable spoils from that war.
Right. So we've presented some key elements of successful media personalization. However, is it a product or a platform? To quote Jeff, every platform-less product will eventually be replaced by an equivalent platformized product. And what he really meant by that is that products and platforms represent two fundamentally different philosophies. Products stand for a closed mindset of vendor knows best. They have mostly fixed functionality and they are closed systems. And what we presented so far is really that. However, platforms, on the other hand, represent a fundamentally different philosophy of customer knows best. They should be customizable, they should be open to change and open to extension. And us knowing how many diverse brands we need to deploy this platform to, we knew from the very beginning that we have to build a platform. Okay, so in the case of personalization, platform means that after completing one simple integration, which handles automatically things like recommendation delivery, optimal caching, and collecting user feedback, we can then use any segmentation, not just the one described today. We can use any algorithm and not just the one described today, and as a matter of fact, we already support multiple algorithms. And crucially for our clients, we can optimize pretty much any KPI, from click-through ratios through engagement all the way to revenue. And the point here really is for all of us here today that, in our opinion, whenever we are tasked with building a data-driven product, really think hard about which parts of your product can be platformized, and do so. Why? Because your future self will thank you, as you will see in this presentation. And once you decide to platformize, there are two fundamental ingredients that will help you do so. First is domain-driven design. There is this ubiquitous problem in systems design of how to decompose a large problem into smaller chunks, basically how to define an architecture of your system. And it turns out that domain-driven design gives us just the perfect tool for the job. It's context mapping. And what it does, what it helps you do, is decompose your whole problem into smaller components that are well-defined, clearly separated, have clearly defined and segregated responsibilities. And what you will find out next is that those bounded contexts, as we call them, map very well into microservices. So suddenly you have a sound microservice-oriented architecture to work with. Then you must really think hard about your APIs of each of those components. And by thinking hard, I mean, build them for today, but design them for tomorrow. Because if you do so, you will be then able to really apply this pluginable logic that I described on the previous slide. And that's what platforms are about, right? And because we are building a data-driven platform, we also need a second ingredient, which is modern data architecture. And there are two parts of this. First, that you should be streaming first. Base your systems around the idea of streams of events that can be collected, joined, processed in previously unforeseen ways. Because if you do so, you will then be able to accommodate future requirements more cheaply and easily. And second, all-up databases. For the very same reason, because if you use whenever possible and wherever possible all-up databases, you will be also able to query them later in the future, to query them in previously completely unforeseen and unexpected ways, because that's what all-up databases are. They can be sliced and diced in many different ways, and you will be able to do that cheaply and cost-effectively, which is what you really need to do, in our opinion.
So we have a platform that has been deployed and delivers for 30 million of users. And are we done yet? We could just keep selling it and keep deploying it to further clients and making more and more. But this is not the case, because just like in the real world, when you solve one problem, you create another. The problems that just shift elsewhere. And let us review just one sample problem that has changed by introduction of personalization. And this is, meet Alice. Alice works at the newsroom. She's an editor, and she every day faces questions like what performs no longer, what needs attention, what to write about, generally what to do. And in pre-personalization era, she used analytical tools and reports to answer those questions, to find what to do to improve the quality of service. And what happens when personalization comes into play? Each page has tens of sections, usually more, and each section, now with personalization, has dozens of versions. As much as you want, but it's usually dozens. That leaves Alice with hundreds of versions to manage. She needs to know what performs no more in segment with users interested in automotive, on section that is related to business, and so on. And as you already might feel, it's too much for human brain to process. She isn't able to process that quickly enough. You could just keep hiring new editors and make them review those reports and make them decide about what to do. But this is wrong, because they are creative kind. They write stories, they publish stories, they find interesting topics. We are wasting their potential.
So we clearly need something completely different. And what we need is a paradigm shift in analytics, in how we approach analytics. And thankfully, some years ago, Gartner came up with this hierarchy of analytics, which basically starts with descriptive. Tools that can tell you what happens. They can tell you that your one particular article is struggling. Then there are tools that can also explain why that particular article is struggling. For example, its click-through ratios are going down. Even better are tools that can also predict outcomes. They can tell you that if you continue to write articles like the one we are talking about, then you will, for example, fail to reach your monthly goals. And finally, there is the holy grail of analytics, prescriptive analytics, which it's kind of turning the question of analytics on its head. And instead of throwing a lot of data at people, graphs, rankings, and so on, reports, instead, why not throw ideas at them? Why ideas? Because our brains are fueled by ideas, especially the creative kind of people. So we really need that. It's the perfect way for us to tell more and yet show less. But how to do that? In case of our platform, it really means that we want to get from this to this. And to give you a concrete example, we want to have this scenario when Alice asks what she can do better. We want to reply that, hey, there is this particular segment of users who are interested in this particular topic. And by the way, that topic is kind of real, as Michał mentioned before. And they are kind of less active than before. So, dear Alice, consider writing more about this topic. Perhaps you will make those users happier, and by doing so, you will help yourself reach your goals. And this may sound very futuristic, but actually what you will find is that it is much less futuristic if you have 3 pillars in place. First, OLAP databases. For the very same reason I described before, because they allow you to query your existing statistic sources in completely unforeseen, unexpected ways, and to do so cheaply and cost-effectively. And for the very same reason, streaming-first architecture. Because if you already have all those streams of events laying there, available to be consumed, joined, processed in previously unforeseen ways, then you will be able to do so. And again, cheaply and cost-effectively. But most of all, what will allow you to do things like that is the platform approach that we described today. This is really what will give you the head start. And if you have all 3 pillars in place, you will find it much easier and much less futuristic than it seems to add any such advanced, unforeseen functionalities to your data-driven platform.
So we've got platforms, we've deployed them, and we are delivering for more and more clients. We've got vision how to address future challenges, and we are executing that. And for now, we are defining this as a success. So let us review our key takeaways. First of all, we think that machine learning projects shouldn't look like throwing a bunch of data scientists, making a fuss about it and seeing what happens. They are business transformation, and they need a clear way to production. That path to production should be based on platforms, on engineering, and on simplicity, because complexity could hinder your undertakings. And with simple solutions on production, you want trust of your stakeholders. And with that trust and sound baseline on production, you can shoot for the stars and introduce real complex machine learning. And that's what we wanted to say to you. We would welcome any feedback from you, and thanks.
Thank you.